Hello and welcome. This week we are playing with mineral paper, watercolors, and the brand new Artistcellar stencils. And this is a technique that I've been using. I discovered it on accident and loved it, and I've been using it in all of my mineral paper pieces. So to start, I have just some watercolors. I believe today I'll be using Jane Davenport's watercolors, but any watercolor will do. I have the brand new, just released Artistcellar stencil set that you can tell has already been very well loved, and a water brush with a barrel full of water. So very limited supplies, but I found that I can create such rich paintings with just these things involved. So grab a little bit of some paint and just start making a little pool of paint on the paper. Mineral paper is really incredible because you can pool as much water as you want to on top of it, and it's not going to disrupt the integrity of the paper. It will not warp. It will not start to diminish the paper quality whatsoever. So you can really get it just as soaking wet as you need to. And so for this first stencil, I am going to get the paper quite wet and just have a little pool of water and color. Now I'm going to grab a stencil and just lay it down directly in the water. And probably pick up just a little bit more color on my brush to make it a little bit more dramatic. Now here I'm using all one color for this step, but you can absolutely mix and match colors on whim throughout the stencil, and it creates a lovely effect as well. So without moving the stencil, I'm going to grab another stencil and do it again since I still have quite a bit of paper left over. This time I'm doing it a little bit different. I'm not putting down that pool of water in advance. I'm just going to lay the stencil down and put paint directly through it. And you will see it, the paint will kind of seep underneath the stencil, and you might think, oh no, it's going to be ruined, but that's not the case. It creates a really cool effect, so just have faith in the process, have fun. If you want it to be a little bit less pressure, you could start a page like I am where it's just a bunch of random stuff in the background. There's no pressure for it to turn out any sort of way. I'm really just playing with technique, playing with color and stencils, and ultimately just playing. So I think in this frame is where you can really see how much the color has seeped under the stencil, but you'll see when it's dry, it's cool. Now I grabbed the Lotus stencil, which is becoming, I think, it's so hard to decide, but I think this might be my favorite stencil in the set, at least in this phase of my life. I've found that I've already used it on a few different paintings, and I'll share that in my Artistcellar blog post so that you can see some of the things that I've done with it. And I cannot remember the name of this color, but it is from the Jane Davenport set, and I think it might be my favorite color in the set. So I let this sit, and I let it sort of dry, and I came back to it, and I'm just going to remove the stencils. And you'll see that some parts are still a little bit wet, but for the most part, it's as dry as I need. This effect is very subtle, but at the same time, very striking, I think, and mineral paper is just awesome that way. I have not yet tried this same effect with just regular watercolor paper, but that might be worth a shot too. You never know. I just like the mineral paper because it really separates the watercolor from the stencil and gives a subtle but yet crisp line. Now, one extra tip that you want to be sure of, whenever you do this technique, because this requires you letting the stencil sit and dry on the page, you want to stay away from using any kind of heat tool so that you don't damage your stencils at all. So just be aware, just let it air dry. Mine's still quite a bit wet. I could have let it sit a little bit longer, but since it is still wet, I can go ahead and do some more stuff with it. In this case, I'm going to use the stencil as kind of a stamp. And since I'm not letting it actually sit and dry on the page this time, the effect is even more subtle. But it still definitely changes the appearance of things, and so it makes it quite fun. So that's just some different ideas of some things that you can do with stencils, watercolor, and mineral paper. And I hope that it has inspired you to create possibly some awesome stuff for your art journal, or even just to create a full-fledged painting. Happy creating, and I will see you next time.